Welcome to the Lights Out Podcast. This is Chris Lights Out Lytle, and this is our journey to document the history of mixed martial arts. I have brought with me my friend, the MMA detective Mike Davis, and together we will preserve the history and hear some great stories from the world in the era of the no-holds-barred. Thank you and enjoy.
Welcome to the Lights Out Podcast. I am the MMA detective Mike Davis. Savant Young is joining us. Savant, first and foremost, appreciate it, bro.
Yeah, appreciate you guys, man. How's everybody doing?
Smooth. So joining us, the guy that helped put this together, Joey Venti. Joey, always a pleasure.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
So for those at home, Joey actually, whenever I'm doing my research on the California guys, Joey's one of my go-to people. He and Savant have known each other for a while, which is why we're here. But Savant Young, you are incredibly private. You don't do interviews. What is the reason behind that?
I mean, I don't know, man. It's kind of hard to say. I'm an in-people person, so I figure, if in-person type of guy. So if you get to know me, if we come across each other, I'm always willing to, talk about how I come up or what I'm about or whatnot. But I feel, I don't know, man, interviews to me are, they're good for some, but for me personally, I just like to, personally know people. I think I feel bad for that because I've heard somebody else tell me that before. Like, man, we never really get to know you or whatever. And I think in the fight business, it's a whole lot of guys that just talk a lot of bullshit, man. So, I don't like wasting my time with all that, to be honest.
All right, that's very good. It's almost as if they hand you a microphone and say, entertain me, and they've done no research.
Yeah. Exactly.
I agree with that. Let's talk about your childhood, how we got here. Growing up, I've heard some things. I'm not sure. Why don't you tell us what it was like growing up in California?
Well, for me, growing up in California, I was born in 76. So, I'm a product of the kids of the 80s. So I've seen a lot of transition. I've seen, I went from growing up in break dancing to the crack epidemic, so I've seen two sides of a coin when it comes to the good and bad of South Central LA. I come from a family of, different backgrounds, some good, some bad, gangsters and hustlers and working class all at the same time. So growing up for me was definitely how should I say it? I mean, I don't want to say typical, but living in South Central in that time, most of the kids come from a typical background, a lot of single parent homes or a lot of kids living with the grandparents because the parents fucked up doing whatever they were doing in their life at the time. So, in terms of where I come from, I was 100%, a street kid. I was a street kid. I wasn't a bad kid, but I was that kid that had to do enough to get by in an area like South Central in the 80s,
Okay. And that little statement right there speaks volumes of the type of struggle that a person may have had to go through in order to eat and have daily things that people take for granted. So California, the transition to crack epidemic, how do you not get caught up in that, being that I think the parental supervision may have been a little loose with you?
Yeah, it was real loose with me, being that I had a father that was involved in all that on both sides of it, whether it been a facilitator of it or an abuser of it. So I've seen that in both regards. I've watched these things kind of ravage through households, mine's included. So, those were things that I, as a kid, I knew weren't good, so to speak. Most kids grow up as good kids. They see things going on that probably shouldn't be going on. But as a kid, I mean, what do you know? You know what I mean? All I cared about was where I laid my head at night, and waking up in the morning and going about my day. So, you know, it was definitely a day-to-day struggle, you know, as a kid growing up in that environment. And pretty much all we had in that area was each other. It was a small group of kids that was going through the same thing. So we kind of all corralled around each other, and you know, and honestly, that's how a lot of these neighborhoods and things were created in some of these areas. You know, you got a whole bunch of kids that didn't have any parental guidance, so we kind of got together and we guided each other by whatever means that was, and you know, that's just how we spent our days.
See, you quantify that as if it was something that anybody could do, but the truth of the matter is, your little group of friends, the easiest thing to do was to continue following suit with everybody else. The hardest thing to do was to make goals, complete them, stay away from nonsense and BS, no matter how fun it may have been. Was your motivator your growing up, like your household, that steered you away from that path?
It was that, and I mean, I had a aunt that took care of me that was kind of like a great aunt, more like a grandmother actually in age. And she was the person that kind of gave me that kind of like family background, you know, like Sunday dinners, you know what I mean? In Black families, we had Sunday dinners. I'm sure many other families had that, but that was like a very big regimented thing that we grew up having. It was always a big feast on Sundays, and she kind of instilled some of those values in me, in terms of, you know, no matter what you go through during the week, no matter what bullshit you go through, ups and downs you may have, you all need to come together on Sunday and break bread and be appreciative of what you got, and you know, be ready to move forward for the next week. So I attribute a lot of my grounding to her, you know, since she was the one that kind of gave me that, and gave me that not only stability, you know, being that, you know, I lived in her house or whatnot, you know, she gave me those things to look forward to as a kid. So I kind of carry that on now today with my own kids, and try to teach them a lot of the things that you know, that I learned in my childhood, to kind of pass along to my kids, you know, so they can, you know, continue that same tradition.
It's breaking cycles. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's your goal. And everybody's got a cycle that they've got to break. Let's talk about early training. The earliest that I could track you down to was the body shop with Antonio McKee. Was there something prior to that?
Yeah, actually, I started martial arts at I'd say 10 or 11 years old. I used to do Kempo karate and Shotokan karate at a rec center called Hoover Park, which was just, you know, in South Central. This was like a park run program that I honestly couldn't afford to do it at the time. So I used to just sit in and watch the classes that went on 3 days a week. And I did that so consistently that the instructor just noticed I would just sit there and watch the classes and leave. And he asked me, you know, how come I wasn't taking part in the class? And I just straight up told him, I mean, I couldn't afford it. But I know I could probably whoop that dude's ass that's in the class. So he actually gave me an opportunity to prove that. And I'll be real, you know, I wasn't as good as I thought I was at the time, but I was definitely scrappy. You know, I knew how to fight, because I grew up with gangbangers, man. We used to just fight for practice, and the older guys in the neighborhood would always get the younger kids together and see who was the toughest and throw us a couple bucks or whatever for their entertainment. You know what I mean? And I was always one of those kids that, you know, they called on to kind of thump with the other kids on the block. So he knew that, and he kind of took me under his wing and allowed me to train for free. And if it wasn't for that guy, you know, his name was Urban Jones. He was part of this organization called AF, which is the Black Karate Federation. Ray Wizard was a person that was part of the Black Karate Federation who probably fought in one of the first UFCs. I'm talking about when UFC was way back. And that's kind of part of my bloodline. I came up through them, and it was a park run karate program at a rec center in LA that I started at.
Okay, so the Black Karate Association, in essence, for people at home to understand, these are people that are doing that for free, giving back to the community, hoping to make a change in somebody's life.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like we got in Chicagoland, we've got this group of grammar school kids, Harvey Twisters, more national champions out of the grammar school group than anywhere else. Most of the coaches are former detainees, man. Just making sure the kids don't make the same mistakes as them. Like groups like that, they need to be funded. That's
Absolutely.
My personal opinion. Absolutely. Okay. Let's talk about Antonio McKee in the body shop. What's your introduction to that guy?
Me and Antonio, we met through a guy named Joe Charles. I don't know if you know who Joe Charles is.
The ghetto man.
Yeah.
Come on, bro.
The ghetto man. You know, funny story about him, you know, before I get into Antonio, but I met Antonio through Joe Charles, but I met Joe Charles through a friend of mine who was a security guard, and he ended up working at an MMA event somewhere. I might have been at a Normandy Casino, something in the neighborhood or whatnot. And he calls me up. He's like, Savant, I know this guy. He does the kind of fighting that you want to do. I know you're going to want to meet this guy. So he gets his phone number, gives me his phone number. And I didn't know who Joe Charles was at the time, but he told me that this guy fought in the UFC a couple of times. So I thought, if this is what I'm going to do, I'm going to call this guy because I had no direction in terms of how could I get close to fighting in this type of, you know, sport with being that I was a karate kid, right? So I've done plenty of tournaments. I've done the internationals. I've done a lot of karate tournaments, but I wanted to take it to that next level. And more importantly, when I used to see them holding those big ass checks up for money that they won, I thought, oh shit, you could actually get paid money to fight. I'm fighting kids on the street for no money. So that was my goal. And I called Joe Charles up. And the funny thing about it is when I called this dude Joe Charles, it kind of seemed like we knew each other already. He was one of those dudes that was the most inviting dude that I've ever met, you know, and he told me, well, I want to meet you. Come over to my house. I lived in South Central. He lived in Culver City. I fucking got on the bus, went over to Joe Charles's house in Culver City. I get to this dude's house. He literally, let me tell you what he does. This motherfucker literally threw some mats from his second-story apartment building down to the parking lot of his apartment building and literally beat my ass up for like an hour. And I got back on the bus and went home. And that was the start of like this whole relationship with Joe Charles. And
it was like the ghetto man's Lion's Den type, like training. Yeah. That's
let me tell you, this dude was a savage, man. He did the most foul shit to everybody. You know what I mean? He was a guy that taught me how to be, I don't want to say a dirty fighter, but he did a gang of dirty shit, you know, that I thought wasn't cool, you know, at the time, you know. So, you know, and through Joe Charles, I met Antonio McKee. Antonio McKee was training under Joe Charles, such as myself, and a couple other guys that, you know, were in the game early. And he started us. We started all our first fights with Joe Charles. Through Joe Charles, I met Gene LaBelle. Through Joe Charles, I met Gokor Savician. So I, you know, me and Joe Charles, I'm like the only two brothers, me, him, and Antonio, the only brothers in a room full of Armenians that only spoke Armenian. You know what I mean? We would go there and get our fucking ankles broke every other week, felt like. And and through Joe, Antonio kind of was like a very, very high level wrestler. You know, I didn't realize who Antonio was, nor did I really know what wrestling was at the time until I met Antonio. And he had this work ethic that was kind of unparalleled by anybody that I've been by. You know, Antonio was a dude that, like, he always talked down on the kids smoking weed or doing this. He came from an era that was like, you couldn't do those things. And he never did it. So he kind of got us into the, at least mentally, into that aspect of like, we have to be as clean as possible and work as hard as we could and keep up the work ethic, you know, or we would hear it from him. So, and this was well before the Body Shop was even a gym. And once he opened his gym, I kind of followed Antonio there because I knew he had the work ethic that I was looking for. And through Antonio, I started to train with other guys like Quentin Jackson and Josh Barnett and all these other high level fighters. You know, I started to be around on a day-to-day basis. So I knew that he was going to be, you know, not only a brother to me, he was my coach at the same time.
So before we get into Antonio McKee, of which I've got a million questions, he's one of my favorite interviews that I've ever done. Joey, why don't you talk about how you two met? You and Savant had met.
All right. I met Savant in about 2002. My coach, Larry Landless, signed me and one of my buddies up for a fight in Hawaii, but they wanted us to spar with Savant to see how ready we were. And that session did not go awesome. It changed the course of my life. I went home and finished out the application for the fire department because Savant made me realize I'm not going to make it in this world. You know, Savant's in Pasadena, so am I. If a guy in my own neighborhood can do this to me, what's waiting for me in Hawaii? So that's how I met Savant. And then it turns out he's a great pro fighter, and I'm watching him fight on the IFL, and he's on Affliction, and then I didn't feel so bad, but it took a few years, you know, before I realized, oh, the guy that whooped me, you know, he's actually something. So
I do a little bit.
Then I went through a depression after that sparring session, but 18 years later, I run into Savant again through Herb Dean, who I've known since the 90s, and we train at Savant's gym, Fight Academy in Pasadena. So that's how I know Savant.
We should have started with that. Savant, please plug your gym.
I own Fight Academy Pasadena. I opened this gym in 2008. You know. Right at the peak of a recession. And, you know, it was my calling to do that. I've always wanted a gym. It was something that I knew was going to be my passion long-term. Like, I don't ever want to answer to an HR department or have a boss or have nobody telling me what the fuck to do, man. So I'm almost there. I'm you know, I've been in it 13 years now, and I'm approaching retirement, hopefully. And I want to be one of those guys that say, you know, I've done martial arts my whole life, and I call it the surfer life, man. I just ride waves, you know. I just want to paddle out, ride waves, and never have to work a normal job. Not to knock anybody's normal jobs, but I want to prove to people that you can do what you love to do. And most importantly, I want to let kids know that if you have a drive for something that may not be as conventional as the day-to-day work, you know, you should shoot for
it. Absolutely, 100%. And you know, without risks, there is no reward.
100%. 100%.
Antonio McKee, how would you describe him to somebody that has never heard him or interacted with him?
Antonio is just crazy as shit, man. I mean, he's a very loyal dude. He is very true to what he does. You know, like Antonio is one of those guys that he's cut from a different cloth. He's real old school. You know, they don't make guys like him, you know, now. You know, he's not about the hype. He's not about, look at me, I'm this guy, I'm the best. You know, although he'll tell you the best in the beauty of that, he's definitely willing to put that on the line. In terms of being outspoken, I mean, I'm sure you know, Mike, he's going to speak his mind. And I mean, that does good and bad for him, I feel, at sometimes. But I think what's real is real. And, you know, we got to have more people like Antonio as far as, you know, being real to the kids, especially I would say black athletes that come up in mixed martial arts, because it's I mean, it's a tough road. I mean, it's easier now, but when we were coming up, it was a lot more politics involved, I think. And, you know, he was definitely vocal in terms of that. You know, he kind of understood what was in the game and what people wanted to look for. And he knew that certain people got marketed different than others. And he kind of always taught us that. He said, you know, he always told me, one way that none of these people can deny you, Savant, is if you just knock people out. And that's what people want to see. And if you can do that, you can make it somewhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Antonio, all right, in our interview with Antonio, he said some of the craziest shit, but it wasn't like 2 or 3 crazy shit things that he said. It was 2 or 3 probably every 3 minutes.
Oh, and yeah. I think he has I don't even know what you call it. I'm sure it's a term for whatever Antonio has. You know what I mean? I don't know what to call it.
It's something.
He can go on a tangent. You know what I mean? You'll talk to Antonio, and then he'll start talking about like some space shit. You know what I mean? And he'll go into like this. Oh, and the funny thing about it though, I used to always question Antonio until I started to kind of see a few things he was talking about. And I was like, oh shit, Antonio was talking about this, but it was actually some substance to what he was saying. So I used to always be like, yeah, I know Antonio, you know, you talking about me smoking weed and shit, you know what I mean? Yeah, okay, right? But he actually is a very knowledgeable dude, man, despite what you may think. And as scattered as he may seem at times, Antonio does know what he's talking about.
Okay, so he talked to us. First and foremost, I started the interview hot. I asked him about John Smith, famed, one of the greatest wrestlers ever to lace shoes here from the United States of America. And he's like, yep, fucked him up.
Yeah.
They pulled me from the audience.
Like that.
I fucked him up. They made me weigh in downstairs. I said, now what? And, that was it. So we clipped it out. Chael Sonnen actually did a video stating he doesn't know if it happened or not, but he needs, verification from somebody that was there. I emailed Chael, and Chael said, yeah, about 5 people that I know, very reputable, saw the entire thing go down. As crazy as it seems, Antonio beat his ass.
Hey, let me tell you, man, Antonio, he is, it seemed like it was effortless for that dude. I mean, like, I was a fairly strong kid, I think, a strong guy now. And Antonio was one of those dudes that just had this other level of strength that I've never felt like helpless wrestling with somebody. Being that I'm not a wrestler. I know wrestlers have this different type of like etiquette and this drive. Like, I'm a striker by trade, but I had to learn how to wrestle. But I always thought, he's human, you know what I mean? He's like me, we're strong. I got muscle. I can work out and lift a little weight. But something about Antonio and his ability to latch on to you and his grip strength and his just drive was unlike anybody else that I've encountered. Him, and also another person I'll say is Gokor Savishian. There were 2 guys that I felt that were like inhumanly strong in certain areas of grappling. It was just a weird thing. So I became that much more of a better striker to keep people away from me, because I never wanted to be on the ground with a lot of people, because I felt like it was it's a hopeless feeling. It felt like you was always drowning when you went with guys like Antonio and guys like Gokar.
They made you question yourself. I could see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That, there's nothing worse than doubting your ability, because it's a downhill slope. Like, you're never going to recover that.
I mean, we would get ready for fights, and to Antonio's credit, he was one of those guys that when we got ready for camp and we would do rounds and he would get in the rounds with us, I think he would purposely allow us to do a little bit to kind of build our confidence up some before fights, to where we felt better about ourselves going in, or we might have felt better about ourselves in certain areas of the preparation. He had a real good ability of not dragging you into the dirt too much, to where, like you said, where you start to question yourself too much. Now, when it wasn't training time or it wasn't like fight time, he beat the shit out of you the whole time and talk shit the whole time. And for whatever reason, when I was getting ready for a fight, all of a sudden I could get a little bit of Antonio McKee, and I don't know what it was, but I think he was letting me, feel a little bit more confidence and allowing me a little bit of position if I was attacking the right thing. So I credit him to that, and I've learned how to do that myself as a coach with some of my guys.
In my opinion, and Joey, maybe you could agree with me on this, I think he is one of the country's probably best coaches that are kind of a little bit hidden right now. Although he's produced some fantastic talent, I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. Joey?
Absolutely. Look no farther than his own son, what he's done with him. That shows what kind of coach he is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Rampage, early days of Rampage Jackson. What are your thoughts of training with him, Savant?
Rampage was lazy as fuck.
Yeah. You're like the third guy. You're the third guy to say that on this podcast. Yeah.
Rampage was lazy. He was, obviously he was good at what he did, but Antonio, when we would get into the gym, we all had to go take like a good little 2-3 mile run before we would work out. And for whatever reason, Rampage would pull up late, or he'd be asleep on the mat a little bit before we got there. And he just didn't do it. Like, for whatever reason, he just believed that he just had to fight. And he was a dog. I'm not gonna lie. Rampage was one of those guys that, like, he had an ability as well to, break people. I used to pepper Rampage up every now and then on the feet, you know what I mean? And then every now and then he would stick me with something real proper and made me understand that I was a 155 pounder. I would really, I would buy into that. Like, yeah, you know what, let me leave this alone, because this is a different ball game, And in terms of just a person, Rampage was very loyal to the team. He whatever he got, he definitely would share the wealth with the guys. He was our guy. Rampage was the one guy that made me make the decision to quit work and pursue this full time. I saw him making money. I seen him in Pride. I seen him with sponsors. Whenever he would get stuff, he would bring us stuff and tighten us up with clothes or gear or supplements. So he wasn't one of those guys that didn't understand that we were the ones helping him be who he was as well. He wasn't like a one-man show. He knew that he had us as a supporting cast, and pretty much his bodies for him to get work. I was in camp with him from time to time. They brought me up in camp with him when he fought Matt Lindland. I was in his camp because I had the best guillotine in the room. I used to catch everybody with guillotines, including Rampage. So they said, hey, we're going to take Savant up there because Matt Lindland, that's all he had. So I was that guy that was pretty much there to help him prepare for that fight that he won. And that during that time, I understood what professional prize fighting and training was, being in Big Bear. At the time, he was managed by Juanito Ibarra. I don't know if you know who that is. He managed Rampage for a bit. So we would, we had a chef. We would get up and run. Juanito would put us in a fucking van and drive us out somewhere and drop us off and tell us to run back. We didn't know what, he was just crazy, man. And then read the Bible to us at the end of the day and shit. So Rampage, I credit him to being that person that made me stop working. I had no plans what I was going to do after I quit my job. I took a leave of absence to go to Big Bear for one camp for 6 weeks. And I, Rampage was making good money. He's gonna make a couple $100,000 for a fight. I'm sitting here looking at me working 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day for $25 an hour, not doing what I loved. And I pretty much called my job in camp with Rampage, told them that I was getting ready to quit. I'm not coming back. And luckily I got a fight. I got one fight, and that fight was the one that got me into the IFL. So, and that was part of Rampage. Rampage was the one that put me in front of those people that got me put on there. And then from there, I think all those things were contributed to me validating me as a fighter.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your first fight. Let's bring it back to the beginning. June 6, 1998, Extreme Shoot 2, Thomas Kenneth. John De La O student was your opponent.
Yeah. I've had a couple before that. Actually, we used to do a bunch of if you ever talk to Herb Dean will know about these things. We used to have there's a buddy named, I don't know if you know Matt, Joey, Matt Reynolds.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, but Matt Reynolds was like he was a tough white boy in Pasadena. He was just, he would just have the knockout power. But this dude literally used to host fights in his backyard where people would come together and kind of like bet money, and fight. And this is one of the first introductions that I met her well before the UFC. This had to be in I want to say maybe 96, 95, it was way back, So we used to just do these little backyard boogies, bet a few $100, whoever quit, you won, So I started there, and then
Wait, was it on mats or was it on grass?
This was literally in the dirt in the backyard. It was no mats.
Rule set.
It was old school, just come back there and fight. And a lot of people don't know that Herb fought a lot back in the day. He's just not a ref. Herb has kickboxing fights. I've been with him out of the country to fight in MMA events. Herb's a beast. That, and a lot of people don't know that, but Herb is he's been around this game a very, very long time in this sport. So fast forward to Extreme Shoot. Yeah, that was my first fight. It was with Joe Charles. It was back then you couldn't do closed fist fights in California, so everything was called pancration, just like pancrase was in Japan back in the day. It was open hand fighting with submissions. We could punch and kick to the body. You can knee to the body. You can do everything else. You just couldn't punch people in the head, with closed fists. So that's what Extreme Shoot was back in that time. And I forgot the guy who ran it, but he was an ex UFC guy too that put that on. But there was
it Ted Williams?
Say again?
Was it Ted Williams?
It wasn't Ted Williams. Gosh, it's on the tip of my tongue. It was Sean McCulley.
Huh.
Oh, Justin's brother, Sean McCulley. Holy shit.
Sean McCulley.
Okay.
So that was my first introduction. That was in terms of being inside any type of like larger scale event. And and I might have won that by armbar or something, I think. And that kind of started it for me. You know, I got paid $500, and I thought that was fantastic that I was able to go in here and fight somebody, make $500. I think I was more excited to wear the little like Marco Huas Valet Tudo shorts. You know what I mean? We thought that was like the coolest shit ever back in the day. We all wanted to be Marco Huas when we were coming up. We thought he was like the prototypical MMA guy. You know what I mean? If you want to do it on the feet or on the ground, Marco Huas was our protege at the time. We loved that dude.
Yeah, he was the man for sure. So Thomas Kenneth, you win by submission. Did you know, like at this point, like the rush, the adrenaline, did you know at this point, man, my entire life is going to revolve around this?
I did. After that point, you know, I had my little garage gym. You know, we would just get together and just kind of train whenever we could. You know, back then I knew that this was something that if I kept with it, there was a chance. And I've always had this belief of, you know, if you don't try, you don't know, right? And if, you know, winners never quit, quitters never win. I've always kind of lived by that. And I knew that it was a uphill battle. You know, I didn't know where the money was going to come from, but I saw people doing it. So I figured if I could just keep surrounding myself around people that were in the sport and you know, doing it, I may have gotten a shot. And that's just what happened to me. I got lucky. I stayed around, you know, birds of a feather, and opportunities came up, whether it been big or small. But I just kind of took all those opportunities. I worked. I mean, I did everything, man, from being a fucking security guard to a collector. You know what I mean? Bill collector. So I did what I could to pay bills. And you know, hats off to my wife for being the one person that kept like an actual steady job with some fucking benefits, you know, when I was all beat up. You know, you know, so
gotta use that insurance again. Yeah.
Yeah. She was a big part of me, you know, being healthy and able to keep going at this, you know, and having a consistent check, to be honest.
Well, Neutral Grounds was also a promotion you had fought for. Another one very, very prevalent within the early California scene. Your introduction to them was actually Scott Herman on June 28th, 1998.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was back in, man, that was in Torrance. This was a guy named Ryan Chenoweth was the promoter. Again, another like small scale backyard local gyms. That's actually one of the places I met Gene LaBelle when I first met him there. This again was through Joe Charles at the time. And I met so many guys at that event. We had, believe it or not, it was like Rico Rodriguez. This is when I met Tito Ortiz back in the day. And through at Neutral Grounds, that was the very first day that rest in peace, Charles Mask from Tap Out. I remember them pulling up with a truck saying, "We got this new fight gear called Tap Out." And I'll never forget that day because I thought it was the coolest shit that they had a shirt named Tap Out, being that was synonymous with the sport. So a lot of people think the UFC started them, but Tap Out was started at Neutral Grounds back then. Yeah. At that particular event was the event that, you know, I first saw them come out, you know, and to watch their growth from that was great too. So yeah, Neutral Grounds was another great place for me. They actually had a little back house that all the fighters used to live in, including Antonio. Antonio lived there for a while. I don't know if you know who Maverick Harvey is. It's another local San Pedro guy who was crazy as shit. He lived in this house. And we used to get together and train, and we went to go fight wherever we could. We used to have Fabiano Iha. He used to come down there and train with us. So then I started to run into new guys. I met Mirko Krokop at this gym. He lived there for a bit.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was just crazy. Some of the people that would come through this place to train, and a lot of them came to train with Antonio, believe it or not, because Antonio, he was like that wrestling phenom, and people wanted to know that. Mirko Krokop came to train with Antonio McKee to learn how to defend takedowns because he wanted to be better at defending takedowns. So let me get Antonio to try to take me down.
So let me just interject. We talked about Antonio McKee saying crazy shit. One of the crazy shit things that he said in our interview with him, when I asked, hey, what do you think of this person? What do you think of that person?
Yeah.
I mentioned the name Dan Henderson, whooped his ass.
Hey, that's Antonio.
He's not lying.
He's not lying, bro.
He's not lying. Yeah.
Really not.
No.
He's not. I mean, I saw him. I mean, I've seen him. I wish I had some of these videos, man, because there were some times that, like, when Krokop went there, right? I mean, Krokop was fighting in the Pride, like he was in the Pride. And I'm sitting here watching Antonio just throw this dude, around the room. And I'm like, what the fuck? It was crazy. Another guy we had in there in the room with us was John Marsh. I don't know if you heard.
Of course, dude. Yeah, I think he fought Oleg Tiktarov. Of course.
Yes, all these guys. Oleg. I used to be in the room with those guys. So I come from a real gritty group of guys, and I was very fortunate to learn from guys like this, where it wasn't about the post count or the likes or the views. These dudes were just legit fighters trying to find their way, and they were trying to get to that point where all they could do is fight. Now these guys are fucking, they're doing posts for money, and
they're point fighting. You're looking at point fighting. This is like you got to look at it. We just interviewed Draculino, and you have to look at it this way. Boxing in the Olympics in the 80s and most of the 90s was just Cubans were just highly decorated, just amazing fights. And then they switched the point system around, and it became almost like Taekwondo without kicks. It was just
absolutely
point fighting. Cuban national team, 0 medals. I mean, and that's kind of how fighting is today as compared to the old days.
Yes, 100%.
No harm, no foul. That's just how it is.
It is what it is. There's an old school, there's a new school. It is what it is.
Speaking of old school, January 10th, 1999, Neutral Grounds number 9 has a 4-man tournament. This is a completely different mindset walking into something like this rather than a single fight. You fought in it. Your first opponent was Ronnie Barwell, and your second was Victor Hunsaker.
Ah, yes. I remember that one. That was cool because I got to fight more than once. The UFC had the tournament style, so it was kind of cool for them to do that because it reminded me of the old UFCs where you had to fight once or twice in a certain night. So I went in there. I forgot how I beat Ronnie, but I know I beat him.
Guillotine.
Yes. Yeah, there it was. Guillotine, right? That was my thing from way back then. But and then Victor Hunsaker, he trained under this guy named Eddie Millis, who ran this team called the Shark Tank. And what they were, Victor Hunsaker was, he was notoriously known for heel hooking people and hurting people with heel hooks. And I thought, at the time I started kind of dibbling, training with go-kart. So I knew how to do leg locks back then at the time. And during this fight, this was the first time that I've actually grossed myself out. You know what I mean? I got this kid in a heel hook and he didn't want to tap. and I believe he might have had shoes on. And I got this guy in a heel hook, so I'm twisting on his fucking ankle. And I'm thinking, I wonder what's going to happen if I just twist this a little more, because obviously I'm trying to win this tournament. And let me tell you, man, it was such a crazy feeling to just feel somebody's foot like disconnect from the joint, as you would kind of like break the drum from the thigh. You know what I mean? And it was just I didn't like it at the time, but I wanted to win. So I knew this was going to be something that I had to encounter moving forward, was to accept the fact that some people were going to get hurt doing this. And I was just hoping that he would tap out, but being that he was the leg lock guy, I beat him with a leg lock. I said, fuck it, man, I need the money. So I just had to do what I had to do.
Joey, what do you remember about the neutral grounds events?
They were just it was kind of, the ones I remember were set up in backyards, but unlike the first one Savant did, like they had a cage, you know.
Yes.
That's the main difference from the first couple you did. But Ryan, what's his name?
Chenoweth, yep.
Chenoweth, yeah, he actually reffed some of Larry's events that I fought in. So I knew him from that, but all the neutral ground stuff that I saw was all videos I saw later. I'd hear about him. I mean, Jay Martinez fought in there.
Oh, yeah, Jay. He was another savage. Oh my God, Jay Martinez.
Yeah, a lot of guys got their start there. Fabiano Iha, who am I thinking of? Javi Vasquez.
Yeah, Javi, all these guys, man.
Yeah, that's kind of where a lot of us.
Even you know who else even fought in there? Fucking Chuck Liddell. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Chuck Liddell fought in an old school neutral grounds way back in the day.
On this event we're talking about, the main event was Eugene Jackson, old school UFC guy, and
Wolf.
Tim Lajek also fought on this card.
Lasik,
So, like,
Tim Lasik.
Yeah, you were getting UFC guys that were doing
it.
So, like, you're talking about getting some looks with Fabiano Iha. I don't think, like, at that time you could properly understand how valuable, even if it's just, you know, light sparring or even heavy sparring, how valuable a lesson like that, you know, could be, you know, for somebody.
It was, I didn't know at the time, but as time progressed, you know, I began to appreciate what I had behind me. You know, I didn't know. I was kind of, you know, I guess I could say, not like these kids are today, not really appreciative of shit, but I just didn't know at the time. But I always remained, you know, loyal to training with my team. Whenever they called for practice, I made sure I was there. Whenever there was times when they wanted to hang out a little bit later and show me some extra stuff, I was definitely receptive to that. And Fabiano was one of those guys. You know, he always had one or two extra things to help us with and on the ground, you know, that we were able to use. And I think what he really enjoyed was that we were really like physically gifted. So I think he thought, man, if I could just get these dudes to understand how to drive this car a little better, they could be really good, you know, because we were just brute force, you know, real strong, but like kind of like dragster with no brakes. You know what I mean? We didn't know we couldn't slow it down. So Fabiano was one of those guys that that helped out a lot, as well as Jay Martinez, who Joey just mentioned. He was another really good, decorated wrestler that spent hours helping us.
You're talking about ring announcer Jay Martinez, correct?
Martinez, yes.
He's doing the ring announcing now. Yeah, you know, it's good to see guys stick around. It really is.
Yeah, it's super cool that, you know, and it's different now. I think I get kids that come into my gym that'll never know who, you know, Jay Martinez is, or Javi Vasquez, or, you know, Eugene Jackson, you know, like Joey mentioned. Some of these guys are going to be forgotten, and their stories are going to be forgotten. So I credit, you know, you for doing stuff like this, you know, because
you have to,
you know, it really is important that we kind of concrete that lineage of where this sport really started and some of those stories that come with it.
Savant, if the problem I have, and Joey, this is our bonding moment, there's a lot of people that talk history that don't know shit about history. And it's just them going, well, what about this? Rather than actually understanding it. And if these stories don't get documented, man, people are dying. They're leaving. Like, we've got like 4 interviews where people are no longer here.
Yeah, that's sad. Sad to say. And it seems like it's becoming a little bit all too more frequent now. You know, it's actually scary. I'm not gonna lie, man. So that's a tough one.
Support systems. One of my favorite people from the independent grind, a person that you worked out with, Jason High.
Oh wow, yeah, Jason. Jason High, really cool dude. He moved here from I think he might have lived in St. Louis or at the time.
Kansas City.
Kansas City, that's right. Yeah, he's from Kansas City. I met him at the body shop. Another one of those guys that was just phenomenal wrestler, phenomenal athlete, terrible hands at the time. So, you know, I became his buddy when it came to striking, and he became my confidant when it came to wrestling. We had similar builds, you know. His work ethic, I definitely shadowed some of his work ethic, him and Tyron Woodley. He was another guy that used to come into the gym. Well, once we started to get paid to fight, you know, I changed my outlook on things. But Jason High was he was a real deal. And I mean, and I will give him credit because I've watched him fight for a long time. And I mean, even as much to say, I think he's even done some bare knuckle fights recently. Maybe even like in the last year or two, I think Jason High has continued fighting. And in bare knuckle, I've seen him fight Sakurai, you know what I mean? I've seen him fight all these guys in Japan. So, you know, Jason High is a durable, very fucking blue collar fighter is what I call him.
He's also incredibly loyal. I don't know Jason on a personal level. I've had a few interactions with him. James Krause, Glory MMA out of Kansas City. Obviously, everybody knows what's happening with them. They're kind of, you know, shrouded in controversy right now. But when this situation first kind of came to a head, man, these people found out who their real friends were. People split. People left. Man, Jason High, they were really good to Jason High, and now Jason High's being really good to them. Yeah, Jason could go coach anywhere in the country he wants, and he's sticking by his friends.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, it's always a test of time when you find out who your real ones are, and you really find out who your real ones are when you're faced with some adversity. You know, a lot of people jump ship. This MMA game is especially that. People, you know, you lose a fight, they want to, you know, go to the next camp, blame it on somebody else, drop weight class, whatever, you know. So Jason High is definitely one of those loyal dudes that I do respect. He's always been about his work ethic, his family, you know, raised his daughter. I know he has a kid and all that. So kudos to Jason, man. I got nothing but good things to say about that.
Yeah, me as well. And I'm not even friends with the guy. We don't even know each other. But from a third person looking at a situation, man, you couldn't pick a better human being to call a friend.
Yeah,
Jason High.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the first time you ever fought a future UFC vet, September 18th, 1999, IFC Warriors 5. You got Jason Von Flew.
I remember that. That was I forgot what casino that was. It was one of these Indian reservations. That was man, I don't know how I lost in that fight. But I know I did lose.
It was it says 5 seconds KO.
No, I didn't get knocked out. I've never been knocked out. Yeah, I've never been knocked out. I can tell you that. But I know I did lose. I think I might have got heel hooked or put in a choke or something like that. And let me tell you, man, Jason Von Flew, when you look at Jason Von Flew on the surface, you think, I'm about to fuck this dude up. You know what I mean? When you see him, you look and you're like, I could beat this dude up. And, he was good. Jason Von Flew was a good grappler. It wasn't the Von Flew choke. I know that because I seen that way later on, but I knew I did get caught in a submission by him. I just can't recall what it was. It was either heel hook or some kind of choke, I believe. But we ended up being cool after that. We crossed paths again. And that was a real introduction for me, when it came to, this is a higher level sport, being on the reservation. I forget who else might have fought on that card, but there was a number of other higher level guys that, made their way besides Von Flew that fought on that card. And, that was, I started taking it a little bit more serious after that point.
It's your first loss.
Getting better and learning the game.
Yeah, that first loss is either people just go, all right, that's it, I gave it a shot, or they level up and it haunts them.
Yeah. And for me, it was more of, I don't think you really know what you are as a fighter until you digest losing. Winning is easy. Winning is expected of you. Winning is the thing that you first think you're going to do when you even decide to fight. Nobody just says, I'm going to be a fighter and, figure they're going to lose first, so you have to learn how to be a good person after losing. And I attribute all my losses to growth. And I can honestly say anybody that I've lost to probably wouldn't fight me twice, So and I've had a number of them tell me that, like, no, I wouldn't fight you again. They've got offered fights, rematches. And I've gotten personal calls from a couple of them that said, hey, man, I got offered to fight it with you again, and we're not going to do that again. So for me, it was definitely something that contributed to my growth as a fighter.
Joey, the hand raising ceremony, when a person loses, I always look at it this way. If someone's not going to stick around to let the other guy get their hand raised, they don't go through it, it speaks volumes of their character. Joey, what's your experience? Joe, what's your experience with that, Joey?
No, absolutely. You can see a loss absolutely break somebody, and then there's other guys that just come back stronger. And obviously, this didn't break Savant because, like, his best wins are ahead of him still.
And with John Hackelman and Chuck Liddell in the opposite corner, it's got to be in your head a little bit.
Little bit, yeah, a little bit. But like I said, I come from an area where we didn't give a shit about that. We just came to fight. We've always felt like if you want to scrap, we're gonna scrap, And I knew once I went down the road of actually fighting against other people that were fighters, that I was going to encounter myself. You know what I mean? I was going to encounter the same thing that I thought I was doing that. I could have beat dudes up on the street all the time, or beat up some of these little gangbanging dudes that really didn't know how to fight, that kind of hid behind that tough, cloak or whatnot. But I put myself not only in front of the scrutiny, I put myself in front of the possibility of being hurt, injured, knocked out, or whatever else that could have came. So it was definitely a me finding myself. I did a lot of this to kind of find out more about myself.
And you learn a lot about yourself, especially when you're tired.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Yeah, that'll make the coward of the toughest of men.
Yes.
No, I guess.
No doubt.
All right. So, dude, I've heard this, but I need to hear it from you. Like, I heard a rumor in October of 2005, you're at Showdown in Maui. Okay. you're backstage where Scott Junk and Bobby Hoffman are supposed to fight.
Yep.
And Hoffman pulls off the card. Do you remember why? I don't want to say it. I'd rather let you. And if not, I'm definitely going to say it.
I remember him being off the card. I forgot what happened that fight. I went there with Fabiano Iha, Bo Hirschberger, this real good black belt through Hickson.
ADCC veteran Bo Hirschberger.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I went there with them. I went there to fight against Kendal Grove. I didn't know who Kendal Grove was. You know, Ryan Chenoweth was like, hey, man, it's this tall kid from Maui. You know, you're going to go fight. It's going to be at 170. So I thought, all right, I'll go fight this guy at 170. Get out there, and the whole other story, you know, happens from that point. But I forget why that Bobby Hoffman fight didn't happen. I don't remember that.
Did it involve him shaking down the promoter for pain pills?
Oh shit. That sounds about right, actually. That sounds about right. And I remember Scott Junk. Okay, you said Scott Junk, was it? Yeah, Scott Junk. This dude had the weirdest fucking little body ever, dude. You know, he just had this crazy, like, I don't think he wanted to fight Scott Junk, to be honest. You know what I mean? Me personally. He was a tough dude. But I do remember that fight, man. That was that might have been the first time that I actually got on the plane and went to fight somewhere else, if I'm not mistaken.
That is incredibly important. Like, you have to have that. Like, in terms of becoming a veteran fighter, you got to get ripped off by a promoter. You got to have you got to have a manager that maybe didn't have your best interest at stake, and you got to take an airplane somewhere.
You have to. I tell my guys at the gym, I say, you're not a professional until you get on the plane, you go to another state or another country, you have nobody there to support you.
And you're the B-side.
Yep. And you're the B-side.
Yep. and it's not like
many times.
Not like maybe I'm the B-side. Oh, no. You're not getting a training partner to come with you. You took it last minute. You better be on weight.
Yes, that's exactly what that is.
Yeah. Jeremy Williams, old school black belt. Chris Brennan black belt, somebody that you obviously interacted with. Yeah, what do you remember about Jeremy?
Another wizard on the ground, another one of those guys that was, you know, just one of those super, like, very wiry, but cool, you know. You never saw him in a fucking pair of tennis shoes. You know what I mean? He always had on flip-flops. Typical OC cat that loved jiu-jitsu. And I mean, he loved this. He wouldn't win any other way. He was one of those guys that he could probably punch somebody out, but that would go against what he was. And, you know, he was one of those guys that we were worried about him. I mean, we had one of our guys fight against Jeremy Williams, and he put him to sleep so cold. It was just, we thought our guy was dead, and we thought our guy was even more dead because we had Steve Mazzagatti as the referee. And I hate to say it, but Steve Mazzagatti let our dude get choked out. Looked like fucking 9 minutes. You know, it was sad. And but Jeremy Williams, man, you know, rest in peace. He had some issues in his life. Him, another guy that fought during that time with us was Justin Levins. They were both, you know, from the same team, you know, and they both unfortunately took their own lives, you know, and so, you know, my respects to both those guys, but they were both great dudes, man. And Jeremy was a very, very, very cool guy in my few times interacting with him.
March 16th, 2002, Ultimate Athlete 2. Were you at the event where the Mongols rioted?
Oh my God. Yeah, you're talking about the Rick Slayton crew. You know,
man, Rick Slayton, Leo, was it Polishkin or Paulskin or something like that? Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, man, that was something else, man, because first of all, you know, whatever. You see the guys you see the bike crews. You know, I know a bunch of Mongols, you know, past and present, you know, and
some are here, some in a few different places at the same time,
absolutely.
but you knew them, right?
I knew them, you know, and let me tell you, man, there's you know, some of these dudes are tough. Some of these little gang banging dudes, I get it, you know, they're ready to shoot guns and shit, but these dudes were different, man. Like they were ready to beat you to death. You know what I mean? Like there's something different to be said from somebody that shoots a gun as opposed to somebody that's like, you know, I'm gonna stab you, you know what I mean? Or I'm gonna just beat you up, all 8 of us. And Rick Slayton was there. Little tiff happens, you know, they start throwing shit, crowd starts getting into it, and then it just turns into like all out just people. I mean, there were people that got stabbed. I don't know if anybody died that day, but there was
one person almost died.
Yeah, there was a number of people that got stabbed. Herb was there. Herb remembers that. I think Larry might have been there at that time. It was almost uncontrollable. I've never seen. I mean, there might have been like 200 of these dudes on motorcycles that came, and they weren't fucking around, dude. Like they really weren't. I'm not gonna lie.
Where were you at when everything went down?
I was just kind of backstage, so I kind of was safe there because I wasn't out where they were. And once all the chaos happened, you know, I got up out of there, man. I didn't hang out. I wasn't trying to go see who was doing what.
No,
you know,
no.
You know, I believe Marsh was supposed to fight on that card, and
Steve Berger was supposed to be on it as well.
Yes, right? Yeah. So I didn't want to deal with it. I thought, man, there's too many of these dudes. There's nothing here for me to deal with, and people were getting stabbed. You know, there were people literally laying on the ground leaking. Police were trying to handle this whole thing. It was chaos. Like I've never seen nothing quite like that situation that just unfolded so quick at an MMA fight in a matter of like 5 minutes. There were people stabbed, people knocked out. The place was chaotic, and it was all over this dude, Rick Slayton, who I don't know where that guy ended up, but I mean, he was. You know,
people say that he was a great guy. It's just
I didn't see how he fit in with that bunch. To be completely honest with you, you know, he was very like respectful to the refs, to the promotion, you know, like to the other fighters. I mean, you know, they just didn't want to see him lose. That's it. So that's just how that unfolded.
Wow. April 12th, 2002, you fight Marcus Vinicius.
Yeah.
Main event for that was Joe Moriara versus Joe Son.
Oh my God. Joe's son. Yeah, I remember that one too. Funny thing about Marcus Vinicius, this was the first black belt that I've ever fought. That was like a jiu-jitsu black belt.
From Brazil.
Yeah, from Brazil. Everybody.
Real quick, I don't mean to interject here, but
no.
We talked about benchmarks in regards to becoming a veteran fighter. You know, everything. Beating a black belt. If you can't beat a black belt, you're never going to elevate yourself.
Yes, 100%. And I was. He owned. I mean, he may still own the place, Beverly Hills Jiu-Jitsu, which is, you know, I'm out that way.
Famous place.
Yeah, he was that guy, and we took the fight. I said, you know, whatever. He probably can't punch. You know, I wasn't worried about him, but I knew he was going to be good on the ground. I'll never forget, man. This dude walked out with a gi on in an MMA fight. And I really took offense to that. You know, I'm over here thinking like, you know, this dude thinks he's Horace Gracie or some shit, you know what I mean, at the time. And the referee that day was Rico Rodriguez. I'll never forget, Rico Rodriguez was the referee of that fight. And I literally, you know, I just pieced him up, man. He had no hands. It was the typical, he was like walking towards me with the sleepwalker hands, trying to take me down, reaching, you know, while I just sticking and moving. And I pretty much beat on this dude for I think we did 2 rounds. But yeah, he was after the fight, we were okay, but he I don't know what he thought. I don't know what he was thinking. I had already been doing some fighting then. I think this might have been his first time jumping into an MMA cage, and just kind of figured, oh, I'm just going to submit this guy. He may not know what he's doing. And, I was a pretty good striker, and I put the pause on Marcus Canisius. I'm not going to lie.
Were you concerned, like, was the black belt kind of haunting you in the back of the head, or are you one of the guys at this time where you punched him once, he's a brown belt, punched him twice, blue belt or purple? Or were you one of those
Honestly,
guys?
I was worried about it. Yeah, I was worried about it back then. But then I had, I had Bo around me, Bo Hertzberger. I had, John Marsh around. I had guys around me that told me, hey, man, if you can keep this on your feet and beat this guy up, he's not going to have nothing for you. And I was very good at trying to listen to what my guys thought. I never went into fights thinking I'm just going to do what I wanted to do. We went in with game plans, and I tried to stick to them as best I could, and it worked out for me for that particular fight.
That's incredible. Joey, were you at any of these fights at this point?
I can't say that I was. No, sorry. He kind of disappeared from my radar until he popped up with the IFL. I didn't know what happened to Savant for a couple of years. There was a couple of years I didn't want to see Savant again after that sparring session. So I was pleased to hear he had a great career, but yeah.
That's awesome. So Savant, you mentioned Kendal Grove earlier. At this point, March 19, 2002, lockdown in Paradise. There was a bit of controversy in regards to the weight class you were supposed to be fighting in. What happened between you and Kendal Grove?
When they reached out to me, they said, hey, you're going to fight this guy, Kendal Grove. He's from Maui. He fights at 170 pounds. So I thought, yeah, I could do that. I fought all across the board. I've been 180 pounds, all over. But I never understood what weight cutting was or anything was until that particular event, because I would always just fight wherever I weighed. Whatever I weighed, that's what I fought at. I never even, like all these fights, if I was 180, whatever, I fought there. So I get to Maui. I had a few pounds to lose to be at 170. And then I get to the weigh-in, and then they say the fight is at 185. So I weigh in, I'm 170. Kendal Grove is 184 pounds. We're flipping out. We're like, man, Bo was mad. Ryan was upset. I went with Ryan Chinwith at the time. We were there, mad. Fabiano Iha. He was the main event, I think, that night. So then I'm like, I'm here to fight. So the people at the weigh-in are laughing because, Kendal Grove, I'm 5'6". And Kendal Grove was, he's probably 6'6" or whatever.
He's huge. Yeah.
He's huge, So they're laughing at the weigh-ins. I was just happy to be in fucking Hawaii, kid from LA, never been nowhere. I'm in Maui fighting. I left the family. I'm just got my boys with me. So I was just excited at the whole experience. I meet BJ Penn. I meet Ross, the boss, Ebenezer. I meet all these Hawaiian fighters that I looked up to or whatnot coming up. So the promoter goes to me like, oh, I'm sorry, this and that. And I said, look, I got paid. I'll tell you guys, I got paid $2,000 to come out here and fight Kendal Grove. And I was so upset at the whole weight thing. The promoters, they kind of did, they did betting. Like they would bet on fights, or they would like take action if you wanted to get some action on the fights. So the odds on me to beat Kendal Grove was 5-1. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the promoter came to me and said, hey man, I'll throw you a little extra money. So I basically told him, look, I want you to take my money and I'm going to bet it on myself.
Like your purse too, or just the extra money?
the extra money. He paid me like an extra $2,000, and I took that money and bet it on myself and said, "I'll fight Kendal Grove. What's up? I'm not here just to let him know that I'm not a punk. I wasn't here for no chicken shit. You know, this is Kendal Grove, this big dude. I wanted to prove to myself that I belong here. I'm a fighter. I didn't fly all the way to fucking Maui.
Wait, hold up, dude. So can you imagine, Joey, can you imagine the promoter throwing him a couple grand and them thinking, this shit's coming right back to us, man.
Right back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They did not think they were paying 5-1 odds to Savant.
No, not by no means. By no means.
And 5-1 odds with a guy. Now, I found this video and it listed him as 192.
Yeah. That's
so
right. Actually, you're absolutely right. 192.
So he missed weight. He missed the catch weight. So not only did he miss the original weight, he also missed the catch weight.
I forgot about that. You know what, man? A good work. Because you know what? You're absolutely right. He was 192 pounds. Yes.
So now a promoter says, we'll just give 5-1 odds. But the reality of the situation is you're looking at a guy probably wasn't training and partying pretty hard. If you're missing that high, that means there's a little lack of discipline.
Well, that, and then, who am I, right? Who is this little dude coming out here from LA trying to fight against our guy who has been fighting, mind you.
It was team punishment at that time. Yeah, it was team punishment. And a Mark Lehman, I want to say a Mark Lehman, I think like a couple stripe blue belt, which, I mean, anywhere else that's a high-end brown belt.
He had him and Joe Stevenson in his corner. Me and Joe Stevenson almost got into it after that fight, but we ended up, squashing that. But so the fight happens. I found out really quick that this was Kendal Grove. You know what I mean? Like, I thought I was somebody, but then after this motherfucker like kneed me in the face, I mean, he literally had me in like double underhooks, and he didn't have to lift his leg up much to knee me in my head. Being that he was 6'6", you know what I mean? And he kneed me one time. I tried to throw, it opened up. I tried to throw a couple things, but it was like the Bruce Lee, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar scene. You know what I mean? Where what do you do with this guy? And he had me up against the gate, kneed me in the face. I was kind of woozy. He hits me with an elbow. I thought, oh shit, I'm getting ready to lose. And then something just clicked, and I picked him up. I slammed him, and on the way down, on the way for him trying to get back up, man, I latched onto a guillotine, which was my thing. The guillotine is my thing. And I put him out cold. I believe Larry Landless was the referee of this particular fight.
He absolutely was. Yes.
He was mad at me because I didn't let go of the choke. And the reason why I didn't, I was upset because he missed the weight. I was very
disrespected
to winning this money. I'm like, I want to make sure I win this money. You know what I mean? On top of that, and I choked him. He was completely out. And I found out later, it's funny. I found out way later on like the Ultimate Fighter when he was on the show, because he went to the Tough show the first season after this. And I found out I like literally choked the shit out of him. I didn't know that. I had no idea, but I heard that. Somebody said, hey man, I heard you choke the shit out of Kendal Grove. I'm like, when? I didn't know during the fight though. Honestly, I had no fucking idea that happened, but I heard afterwards they said I choked the shit out of him, and I thought it was just fucking hilarious. And me and Kendal, we've crossed paths and talked about it, man. He's actually he's a really good dude, man. Kendal Grove,
real good guy,
super good dude. I got nothing but good stuff to say about that dude. We just had to fight.
Yeah, we asked him about this fight in our interview with him, and he was just like, he wanted to explain it, and then he just like, man, it is what it is. Essentially, later on, he admits, man, he wasn't doing things the right way. He had to recommit himself to his faith and family. And this experience was kind of the part that helped get him there.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, I mean, that's what losses are supposed to do. You're supposed to learn something from it.
Absolutely. I've been there, so I get it.
Let's talk about old school training partner Tracy Hess.
Oh, man. Tracy, another Chris Brennan guy. Tracy Hess was pretty much one of Antonio's right-hand men. You know, he was one of those guys that like helped Antonio run his gym at the body shop. Although they had kind of two different entities going on. You had the daytime crew, which was just like all the crazy brothers in the morning at the body shop. And then you had the nighttime group was Sub Factory, which was what's Next Gen was like Tracy Hess's group, and they all they all trained out of the same spot. And Tracy Hess, he's helped me a lot too, man. Tracy Hess always looked out for all the guys. He was one of the guys that got me on Affliction. When I fought on Affliction, I had just came back from fighting in Japan. I fought in Shudo, and after Shudo, I went and fought in Affliction, and that was all because of Tracy Hess. So, you know, and I still talk to Tracy Hess. He texted me last night, a matter of fact, you know, about some fighters for a fight this weekend potentially. So Tracy is another one of those guys that I think he comes from the same background as me. He has fights. Never really looked for the glory like some of these other guys do. You know, they just kind of want to get in it for the hype. Tracy was one of those dudes that is very talented, but never really wanted to break out into that bigger crust, you know, of the sport. But he very
Pioneer.
Yeah, 100% pioneer.
Okay,
all
so
those training guys for sure.
Okay, so and you were friends with Antonio McKee. So Antonio McKee and Brennan butted heads quite a bit. There's a lot of ego between the two of them, and neither of them are going to back down. So when we interviewed Antonio, he said that after the Chris Brennan fight, he had difficulty accepting it to levels that most people couldn't understand because the fight game was more real to him than other people. And he was on his way to Chris Brennan's house to kill him.
Hey, I believe that. Antonio is, Antonio, man, I got some stories about him. I can't say some of these, but.
Wait, dude, it's the greatest interview we've ever had. Dealing drugs in order to support like MMA shows. I mean, dude, he was fucking one of the greatest guests we've ever had.
I'm trying to tell you, this is the only motherfucker that I knew that had would bury money.
Yeah.
Antonio, that dude, man. Yeah, he's not one to fuck with. I'll be real with you.
No,
Antonio is not that guy.
So he said that while he was in front of, like, on his way to Brennan's house, somebody talked him out of it. I don't know. I don't know if that was you or somebody else, but Antonio ain't listening to many people.
And you know, there's a number. I've had to talk Antonio down a couple times myself. To be honest with you, I've had to talk him down a number of times. He had issues with a few people. You know, I don't know if you guys remember remember Jamie Yeager?
I don't know who he is.
He was a kid that fought in Tough. He used to train with us. One time, you know, he called Antonio a bitch at the gym. And Antonio was like, man, I'm at this motherfucker's house, Savant. I'm like, what are you doing, Antonio? What are you doing? You need to leave. He like, nah, I'm gonna show him a bitch. You know, and I'm like,
no, I'd move.
But yeah, he's, you know, Antonio now has he's found his face. You know what I mean? He's become
he's the greatest. He's the greatest.
He's such a good dude now. And I think his son is, I think, honestly, a testament of all his past like mistakes and setbacks and everything. He's instilled all that stuff into his son. And and he's done a good job with that. And he's helped me too, man. I really do owe Antonio a lot of my accomplishments. I do owe to Antonio.
Were you at his Chris Brennan fight?
I was not, but I know.
Okay.
I know he got knocked out by Chris Brennan.
Do you know the reason? I mean, this is out of his mouth, not mine.
The reason that we always would come up with, and we'll fuck with him till this day with this. Whenever the black fighters go dye their hair, you're getting knocked out.
Okay.
That was when he had the little blonde hair shit. We were like, what are you doing, dude? You know, so that was our reason.
His reason, which I think you're probably correct, but his reason was that he was having sex in the parking lot minutes before the fight and his legs went.
Oh, well.
And he'll never do that again. That's what he learned from that loss. He'll never have sex right before he goes into the ring again.
Okay, so knowing Antonio, I believe it.
Oh, no. Dude, he's not lying.
Because let me tell you, you know, Antonio, you know, if you want to talk to Antonio about some shit, he's going to tell you, like, hey, what I got is special, Savant. You don't understand. I got a motherfucking arm between my legs. Why you think they call him the Mandingo? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, and he also mentioned that nicknames are given. They're never ones you're supposed to come up with, which is why he's called Mandingo. Right?
Oh my God, dude, this is funny. This is so funny, dude.
He's the best. He's the best. Like, if I had like a top 3 guest for Joe Rogan, Chris Levin's up there. He's 100% there, and same with Mark Coleman. Those are my top 3 Joe Rogan guests. There.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Okay, so after that, and you know, I know we're running a little late. Are you cool with time?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Yeah, we hanging.
All right, cool. All right, King of the Cage, Terry Treblecock, Chris Cordero. What is your relationship with them?
I wasn't really fond of Terry, to be honest. Not that he did anything personal to me, but I heard things that he does the other guys that I knew, and you know, like holding them in contracts when they're trying to go to the UFC, but you know, I got you locked in for years or whatever the case may be. Like very long-term contracts. And I mean, and I guess you could argue the fact that that's the athlete's fault at the same time. But another thing I feel is we weren't really taught a lot past the ability to do what the craft is, which is fighting. And promoters, I feel, are opportunists, right? For the lack of a better word. They want to create an event that we facilitate happening. Now, without no us, there is no promoter and no show. I kind of felt like, you know, Terry, Dana, a lot of these promoters, quote unquote, they feel that they're the reason why you have the ability to do what we're doing. And I don't like that about promoters. I don't like that they hold such a high standard to themselves, or, you know, they seem like tough guys, right? Like Dana he walks around like he can whoop everybody's ass when we both know, like, come on, you know? So I kind of got that little vibe about Terry. And I only fought in King of the Cage one time. You know, I fought in King of the Cage one time. And I think that was the reason why I did it. At the time, I was just in a real dark spot, you know, life-wise. I was kind of just, you know, out of shape, just kind of partying, not doing nothing. Herb Dean hits me up saying, hey, you want to go fight in Canada? You know, I'm like, hey, whatever, you know, when is it? How much they're going to pay me? Oh, they'll pay you a little money. I needed the money. So I kind of got myself together best I could over the course of, I think maybe like 4 or 5 weeks or whatever. Fly out to fucking Canada. I didn't even ask who the opponent was. I just knew I was fighting. Okay. But that was me though. Like I was that kind of fighter. Like I've never just been beat up, you know, like I was always formidable. Like I was okay at protecting myself enough, you know, or doing enough what I could. So I get out there and then I find out, you know, at the time I'm fighting against John Alessio, right?
Wait, John Alessio, the natural.
Man, let me tell you.
He's cornered by Sean Tompkins.
Hey, let me tell you. This white boy was tough as shit. You know what I'm saying? Like he was really good, dude. Like I know I could have beat him with a real camp, but I was going there to go get a check, man. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go fight. I need this money, but I'm gonna give him. I'm gonna go in here and see what I got. I told Herb, you know what? I'm gonna go out here and push out him for one round and see where I'm at. Gets past one round. I know I'm probably going to gas, you know, and get into some trouble. And that's exactly what happened. I think I went out and maybe won the first round. Second round came, he got me in a pretty bad spot. I was taking some damage, you know, elbows were coming down. And he ended up taking my back and getting me in the choke. So I wasn't mad at that for the fact that I was able to push the pace on somebody like him. At the time, he might have been like, I don't know, 20-3 or some shit. You know what I mean? He had a lot of experience at the time as opposed to me. And again, it was one of those learning experiences. And I think after that, I started to like pull myself back in. You know, I credit that fight to me, you know, to stop sitting on the porch and just fucking my life off. You know, I kind of got it back in gear following that John Alessio fight.
Yeah, man, that's important, man. It reminds you of stop idling, keep pushing forward.
Absolutely.
You had mentioned going to Korea with cornering Herb Dean. That was October 8th, 2006.
Yeah.
He fought Jung Yu Choi.
Yes.
All right. So usually first, what was your recollection of the event before my next question?
I think the event was called
Spirit.
Maybe Spirit. Yeah,
Spirit
right?
FC.
Yeah. So what Spirit FC was, it was identical to Pride, but just in Korea. It wasn't as big, but it was the same rules. You could stomp and soccer kick.
Dennis Kang made a name for himself on Spirit FC.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Dennis Kang. I met him then. I don't know if he fought that night, but I remember meeting Dennis Kang. That's when I met all these guys from American Top Team. I became friends with Laborio. You know, we partied in Korea out there, me, him, and Herb. We got many stories about that. If you ever see Laborio and talk to him, just tell him that Savant Young says, we need to get a haircut. And it's an inside joke. You know?
Okay. Yeah, we had Liborio on. He was one of our better jiu-jitsu interviews. Treculino as well.
Yeah, great dude,
sour.
Man. Yeah. So Spirit FC, Herb goes out there, and at the time, I don't know why Herb wanted to fight, because I thought, okay.
He didn't need to, man. He doesn't need to. He's Herb Dean at this point.
He didn't really need to. You know, he did it, but he went out there, and Herb put a clinic on this dude for one round. You know what I mean? I'm not going to lie. He put a clinic on this dude for one round, punches, socked this dude out. And then the second round, you know, Herb gassed out, got gassed out. I don't know if he got submitted. I think he got submitted that fight. But we went there. It was fun for us. We pretty much just went there to go have fun. I almost got into a fight with Hector Lombard, you know, backstage, which was funny. Herb, if you ever talk to Herb, he'll tell you about this story.
He's so calm and collected. I have trouble believing that you almost got in a fight with.
Yeah, buddy, that dude is a fucking madman. He's a madman. So I'm helping Hector Lombard warm up in the back. Like, we kind of all got to it. All the non-Koreans, you know, we kind of got together and we were helping each other out. So he was like, hey, man, warm up with me a little bit. You know, and I'm like, yeah, cool, of course. You know what I mean? Like, and Hector Lombard is intense, man. This dude is like, he's intense. You know, his whole stature, his demeanor, and I don't know if that's like the Cuban thing or the what with him. You know, he's like literally almost fighting me in the back, and I'm telling him like, "Hey, man, calm down. I'm just trying to help you warm up." And this dude just kept rattling off. And I'm like, Herb, this dude's tripping out, dude. Like, I can't do this. You know what I mean? So Herb had to kind of like talk me down because I was literally at the point where I was like, I'm just gonna sock this dude, man, right before his fight. And I'm glad I didn't, because I didn't realize, I really didn't know who he was at the time until after I saw him beat the shit out of this Korean kid so bad. The guy came back crying, man, and he put his whole head in the ice bucket. He was so beat up, he iced his whole head, man. And then Hector comes back, and I was just like, all right, you know. And then I saw him, you know, I think he went to the UFC or something high level after that, man, and became
Bellator. Yeah. Were you guys cool after his fight? Like, did he kind of?
Yeah, we were good. Yeah, we were good. You know, he kind of kept it cool. It was just pre-fight intense for him, you know, and I got it, but I was just kind of telling him like, hey man, like, you know, we brothers here, bro. Like, we here. I don't know what's going on, but he was crazy as shit, man.
And in our Lombard interview, like, are you familiar with what happened to him in Australia?
No.
All right, so he defected in Australia, and
really?
He went from gym to gym, and he was getting thrown out of gyms from beating everybody up or sleeping with their wives. So every fight in Australia he has is with a different gym, and it's because he was told to leave. And right before his Kyle Noak fight, a couple people broke into his house to kill his ass, and his 2 dogs got shot.
Oh wow!
That's why he left. That's why he left Australia. They were going to kill his ass.
Oh shit! Okay, well, see, I knew he was crazy. You know.
Yeah. Dan Lambert, in our interview with Dan Lambert, he goes, "Phenomenal human being, not allowed at my gym anymore, but a great guy.
That's hilarious. Yeah, he was an intense dude, man. Way intense.
Brett Cooper, your experiences with him?
Brett Cooper, honestly, Brett Cooper was the tough young kid in the gym with us when we were coming up with Antonio and Tracy Hess.
That's correct.
We were already fighting and traveling and kind of making money when he was just he was a young boy. And Brett was sparring partner of mine. You know, he helped me out a lot. I helped him out a lot, you know, trying to teach him how to become a good striker. I taught him certain little tricky punches that he's used till this day. And I knew that Brett was going to be special. Like, I knew that he was one of the next generation of guys to come up following when we were done, that it would be guys like Brett Cooper that would, that kind of still come up with the, I guess I could say old school. He was young fighting. Like, Brett was 17, 18.
He was like addicted to it. He was addicted to it.
He was addicted to it. Yep. Like 100% addicted to it. He was always angry. He was the one guy that used to question Antonio the most at the time. He would be the one guy that would like,
stupid and young. Yep.
You don't know what you're talking about, Antonio. Because, you know, Antonio, he'll go on this tangent. Mind you, you know, Brett Cooper's probably like one of the only white boys in the gym. So he had to deal with all of his brothers talking shit all day. And then all the time, right? So whenever we would get on some black and white shit, Brett had to always stand up for him. And Antonio would be the guy. And Brett would be like, that's not true, Antonio. He was that kid. And I've always respected him for that, because he would always call bullshit. You know, he really would.
To Antonio's credit, the leverage he uses when talking, because he loves talking about racism. I guess he loves it. And
he loves it.
He would always go, some of my kids are white. You know, that's like, now what? Now what? Gotcha.
Yeah, of course.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's Antonio. That's him. 100%, man. We had two kids that came up with us. It was Brett Cooper and it was JJ Ambrose. We all were in the room at the same time. They were the young boys. I used to beat up on these dudes, man. I was like the kickboxer at the time when they were coming up. But they ended up, both of them till this day are still active, and I think I can attribute their success and the ability for them to go this long to the dedication and the rigidity that they got from Antonio McKee. 100%.
Yeah. Man, that guy, honestly, he should be going to schools giving speeches, man. Fuck that scared straight shit. Antonio McKee, look at you in the eye and tell you fucking reality.
I agree.
Yeah. Ahmad Reese.
Oh, man.
I'm hitting all of them, man.
Man, Ahmad Reese, another guy who pioneer, one of those guys that like did MMA well. He had a battle with rest in peace, Loden Sincade, that showed me that with determination and with will, you can win. And that was one of I think he might have fought Rico Rodriguez too, if I'm not mistaken. But Ahmad Reese, man, he was ahead of his time as well when it came to leg locks and stuff like that. And I don't know if you know who Robert Ferguson is.
Of course, man.
Yeah. So all those guys were mentors of mine. I still talk to Ahmad now. He's dealing with some real bad like health complications right now. But we still kind of like communicate through text from time to time. He was the one guy that said, I'm going to bring mixed martial arts to South Central. He opened up a little gym by Leimert Park in LA, right off of Crenshaw Boulevard. And he had all the little Black and Mexican kids training in his gym under him, teaching them MMA. Like there was a bunch of karate stuff going on down there. Ahmad Reese, I have to say, was a pioneer in that area. And
within the inner city.
For the inner city, and he brought up one kid, and I think this kid might have went to jail for life. This kid named Jeremy Jackson.
Of course. Yeah, he managed to get there. Yeah.
Yeah. He, who was a phenom. This kid was so good.
Win over Nick Diaz.
Oh my God, he was so good. And that was a kid that Ahmad Reese started training. And I thought he was just going to be it, man. But everybody don't make it in this game, as we know.
So Joey, like I think to quantify what Savant is saying, in essence, around this time, mixed martial arts, I'm not going to call it like a white sport, but what I will say, it was an upper class because it was very expensive to train.
Yeah, just to get jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, like especially jiu-jitsu. So like the Brazilians coming over, I'm not going to say they overcharged back in the day. I will say they came from a very difficult situation in Brazil, and they knew their value, they knew their worth, and they demanded it when they came here to the United States, and rightfully so. But the inner city never really kind of got their shot until years later. Would you agree with that, Joey?
Absolutely. Totally agree. Yeah.
So you're saying Ahmad was one of the guys, the pioneers. And I used to always say that shit. And someone's going to open up a gym like in Englewood in Chicago or in Harvey in Chicago, scoop up all that talent, get rid of the bad seeds, grab the kids that are dedicated, maybe not the best talent, but the ones that are dedicated, and they're going to get a world champion out of that.
Yeah, and that's kind of what that was his kind of his look at it. He was that guy. As we mentioned earlier, Joe Charles was one of those guys. And then it was there was a couple other guys within that circle that one of the first black belts under Machado, there was like 5 black belts. And I'm thinking, God, what's his name? I want to say Rick Mentor. is his name. And he was another guy that kind of gravitated with Ahmad, and he was like the jiu-jitsu guy there. So, and as Joey was saying, it was too expensive to afford jiu-jitsu at the time. And then when all the Brazilians came, they traditionally went to those areas that people could afford it. You know what I mean? So
money. And you can't blame them. I mean, they're coming from abject poverty and they're about to make some money.
Yep.
The fuck, I mean, why would anybody pass on that? So there's no harm there. Yeah.
No harm there. You know, so I'm just glad that I was able to encounter some of these guys and they allowed me in that circle. You know, I've been very fortunate to say that I've trained amongst some of these guys, and I get it. There's all these wizards now. There's all this different kind of jujitsu. There's all this crazy whatever right now, but that all started somewhere. And I think without all these guys that were the driving force behind the notoriety of the sport in general, you know, we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be doing these interviews, you know what I mean? And we wouldn't have this sport to talk about like we do now without those guys. So,
and look how it changed you. Look how it changed your perspective. You mean to tell me a couple kids stumbled into your gym and you kind of read between the lines and you took care of them? Guarantee it's happened.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I've done it many times. I continue to do it. You know, I've gotten plenty of kids that, you know, I don't look at them as, you know, what kind of money can I make from you, as opposed to looking at them like, well, how can I direct you towards something that's going to help you be better, or not only that, carry on my name, right? I'm gonna be long gone, but I would like for somebody to say, I got started doing this because of Savant, and let that be their testament later.
Or, you know, I had a really difficult thing that happened to me in life that would have caved in most people. And the reason I didn't is because I took jujitsu or MMA classes with Savant Young.
Absolutely.
Allowed me
I'm
to
okay
handle
with
that.
You know, I'm all right with that being part of my story, you know?
That's a win, bro. Absolutely.
Win. 100%.
Yeah. So Savant, you got a little grappling group with the old school guys right now. I know Larry Landless still goes to your gym, Herb Dean. Would you mind letting people know, like, in my opinion, like yourself, Landless, Herb Dean, I know Joey, you go over there as well. I like the old school cats. So like, when do you guys all get together to grapple?
So what we do at the gym on Tuesdays and on Thursdays at 10 a.m., we have the over 40. We have an over 40 and over, I guess I should call it, grappling group.
The Blue Pill group. Yep.
I had a name for him, Joey. What was I calling us? Do you remember?
Wasn't just old man grappling?
I had something that was funny as shit. I can't remember right now, but I remember having a
geriatric
name for, you know, and we just get together. It's just open mat. Anybody's welcome to come in and come train. And, you know, we spend an hour working out. Oh, I know what the slogan was. It was like, where you roll around and you sit around and you roll around. It's one of those deals. We roll one round and then we sit around and talk about it. You know what I'm saying? That's the premise of the group. So open whoever, Tuesday, Thursdays, 10 a.m. at Fight Academy. Anybody's welcome if you want to come in there and, you know, show what you know, and you know, you're more than welcome.
So Savant, your reputation, I'm just going to be very direct with you. So this is why Joey and I hook up. So whenever we interview somebody, dude, I'm tracking on friends, family members. I'm tracking on like kind of people that maybe were outside the group but know a lot about them. Yeah. Every person I ever talked to you in particular about, yeah, man, I didn't have really much interactions with them, but I really respect him. Okay, well, what about issues at the gym? What about maybe like some gym wars or some gym stories or shitty promoter or something backstage? Nope.
Hey, that's how it should be, I think. You
know, but it's also good stories on the other end. You know what I mean?
Yes. I mean, there's some stories there. You know, Herb got a lot. You know, me and Herb go back man, I mean, well before he was a referee. So Herb has crazy stories about me. We've got crazy stories with each other. Nothing like illegal and shit, but just crazy stories. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was always one of those guys, honestly, Mike, that I just like to surround myself around good people, and I like to present myself as an asset to whoever's around me, as opposed to being negative and shit.
I don't think you understand, because it's you, how much people respect you behind your back.
That's cool. That's cool, man. That's good, honestly.
Yeah, I've never had anybody like. So when I did all my research, I'm going with Joey, and I'm like, Joey, I got like almost nothing here with Savant. Like I got like even like with other people that may have been done you wrong. Like what? Kendal Grove missed weight.
That happens, right?
That's my crazy shit that I got to talk to Savant about. And then,
that's funny. That's funny.
So Joey's like, no, man, he's a good talker. They said, I knew you were old school, so I knew it was going to be a good conversation. But everybody that I talked to behind your back, they just said, oh, no, man, that guy gets mad respect. No, I got nothing, but he's a great guy.
Yeah. Well, and another thing with me is I'm one of those guys that, like, I can show you better than I can tell you, right? Like, I don't talk any shit. I show up to the room. I do what it, until this day, I've been hosting open sparring at my gym on Saturdays for 13 years without missing a beat, right? And in that, we get all these fighters that come in, like all these guys. I'm talking Bobby Green, I'm talking, all these high-level guys come into my gym to train, and they come there because I'm not just on the sideline, you know what I mean? Like, I lace up, I spar these dudes, I work out with them, I sit on the side, I give them that tutelage, I give them a view that they may not have known, both as a fighter, as well as a brother, and most importantly, as a coach, So I think that's one of the things people respect about me is I'm always willing to put it up, like some coaches become coaches, or they just get fat and out of shape. And yeah, I'm fat and out of shape, but guess what? I still glove up and whip that ass.
You're still Black Superman. That's right.
Hey,
you still put that cape on.
Till this day, so, and I'm going to continue to do that until I can't. I told my wife, I'm going to do this until I physically can't do it. But I'm always going to move around. Like it's important for me to still stay sharp in the craft, for me to be able to tell somebody how to do it,
So Savant, at this point, we're at the 2-hour mark, so we're going to kind of close, but your IFL run, your affliction, I'd say that the pinnacle of your career in regards to like the cool things that took place, as interesting and incredible as the interview has, this journey just started. Like that's what's crazy, which is why I respect you. We're going to have you back on. We're going to give it a little bit of time if you're cool with it. And we're going to cover that stuff because like Ken Yasuda, I know you were on the Tokyo Sabres. The whole team fucking hated his ass.
Yeah.
But there's so much there. Your fight of the night with Ryan Schultz, where whoever won that fight, the team would move on. Like you carried a lot of weight on your shoulders going into a lot of your fights. And what we just went through is the reason that people believed in you to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Joey, why don't you close this out, man?
Hey, Savant, I appreciate you doing this. Thank you for coming on. I started out as a fan on this podcast, and because of you, I got to take part in one of these. So I appreciate that.
Man, yeah, anything. We're good.
And I am so glad you brought up the Hector Lombard stuff, because that's the one story
that was
Herb told me not to bring up. So I'm so glad you just brought it up. Thank you. You made it easier.
I had a missed weight, and he goes, "No, man, he almost got in a fight with Hector Lombard." I'm like, "Fuck, I'm in. We're in. We're doing that one." Savant, thank you so much, man. An absolute pleasure. In all honesty, I've never met either of you guys. Joey, you and I talk almost daily, and Savant, fuck fighting. As a man, I admire you, and I don't think you were being honest with us in regards to how difficult your childhood was. And it speaks volumes of your character. The little I do know tells me that it was a story that I think about 99% of the people would have turned their cards in and said, fuck it, man, and went to the other side. But you didn't. You persevered. You persevered.
Yeah,
and,
I'm one of those guys that a lot of the kids from the neighborhood lean on that, man. I'm not that guy. Like, this is where I'm at now, so this is where I'm gonna be, you know.
And I hope that people at home understand that it's just what you battled and what you went through and where you're at today. You ain't supposed to be here, bro. You're not supposed to be here.
Absolutely.
And you're giving back. Thank you so much, Savant. Take care,
brother. I
appreciate
you, guys.
Joey, stick around for the wrap up. Take care, Savant.
All right, man. Y'all be good, man. Take care.
Joey.
All right, one in the books.
Dude, this is the second guy you hooked us up with. Larry Landless being the first, which is a phenomenal interview. And now we've got your other guy, Savant.
Yeah. No, I wanted Savant's chapter of MMA history recorded on your podcast. I think he's a guy you just shouldn't overlook. He's been doing it since the 90s. And I just wanted him to tell his story.
And it's like, man, I'm just going to be like very direct in regards to this. Like, he is so private. Had you not gotten involved with this, he wouldn't have done it. This guy, with all of his knowledge, all of like the path and career trajectory, he's one of those guys that never would have told it because he's too proud. And, you know, and there's like a lot of maybe not respecting certain reporters and stuff. Like, there's a lot of moving parts with that.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm glad we were able to get it done, and I'm glad this one's in the books.
So
you should have him back for the second part of this.
Oh, do we have to?
Yeah,
we have to. So we got to get Larry Landless back.
Absolutely.
For King of the Cagers, which is probably going to be a multi-episode thing. And you were there for a lot of those, correct?
For a lot of it, yeah. Wet and Wild, I was there for a lot of it.
Oh, dude, you were there for Wet and Wild?
I was standing cage side with a girlfriend during Wet and Wild. In that era, you were already a psycho for liking MMA, but then to stand through a rainstorm while it's going on, yeah, you're nuts.
Did you have like a poncho, or were you guys just in the same clothes?
I had like an overcoat, but we were drenched, man. It was miserable, but it was a great card. There was all these guys from Pride Fighting, Guy Metzger, and I wasn't going to leave.
How pissed was she?
Pretty pissed.
Yep.
Pretty pissed, yeah. I wish her well. I don't know what she's doing now, but yeah, she was pretty mad.
She's got a great story for all the guys she's met after you.
I set the bar very low for the next guy after that event. Yes.
That's excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, what you're going to do, because you're right here, we're over 2 hours, you're still listening, you're going to like, share, subscribe. People on YouTube, let me tell you something, man, like, we switched channels, some bullshit happened. I don't want to get into it publicly, but what took place is we had to move our channel over, and we need you guys commenting. Even if it's your old comments, we got to get back into the algorithms, because the thumb is on a scale against us. Like, we're having phenomenal interviews with like less than 100 views, which is fucking insane. While our Buzzsprout, which is like Spotify and iTunes and Google Play, it's through the roof right now. I think we're coming up on 100,000 downloads just on, between those three devices. So, Joey, man, dude, you and I have never met, man. I can't begin to explain to you how much I appreciate everything you've done behind the scenes for us.
Happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's fun. So, Larry Landless, let me just get through like the next 2 weeks. You and I will get together with the King of the Cage stuff, and maybe you can join us for Larry Landless as well. Is that cool?
Hope so. Absolutely, man. Have a good one.
Awesome. Like, share, subscribe. This thing doesn't survive without you guys, and it's not like we're making any money here. So if you guys can do us that favor, review on iTunes as well, it'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.